What's the most disturbing scene from a movie? Amistad, where they tie some of the people onto a rope that's attached to a weight and throw the weight over the side of the ship. They get dragged off one by one into the sea. Saw it when I was in 5th grade and couldn't finish the movie and haven't forgotten it since. In most horror movies, the camera cuts between the face of the monster/killer and the victim, and you get a lot of fast cuts and reaction shots to amp up the tension. Here, the camera just stays on the victims as they get stabbed repeatedly, and it's so unexpected and horrifying. The camera treats it like a scene of two characters talking or something, and by lingering on the violence it produces incredibly profound discomfort. Wasn't he talking about the teen in his kitchen that says something along the lines of "let's go play with stuff from my dad's room, he's got a gun," then he turns around and some of his head's blown off or something? I am probably misremembering as well. What a fucked movie. He never looks behind himself in the car, and then he's in bed in utter shock, not comprehending what happened. When the mom screams, you can see him flinch and his brain can no longer pretend that it didn't happen. Maybe not the top of the list, but the first thing that pops into my head is the hobbling scene from Misery. Damn, Kathy Bates terrifies me to this day. Also, a long time back, there was a scene in a movie on late night television. A girl was running through the woods from two guys. One surprises her and she manages to get his shotgun. She blows his head off. The thing is, they show enough of his face being lifted up and blown away, it was absolutely terrifying. No idea the movie, no interest in finding out. Lol. There was also the cop that gets stabbed in the back with a stake and then has his head run over by a ride-on lawnmower. Edit. It's been a few years since I read it, but doesn't she also cut some of his fingers off after he complains about missing keys on the typewriter and then use those same fingers as candles on a birthday cake? Edit 2. Fun fact, in King's original ending he was going to have Annie kill Paul and have the Misery Returns book bound in his skin. I loved how realistic the brother's reaction was, which made it so much more impactful. His refusal to acknowledge the reality of what just happened, by just not turning around, and then just going to bed, desperately hoping to wake up from a bad dream in the morning. It is so incredible, intense and shocking, yet completely relatable. That scene is masterfully done. Similar story. I had heard someone say "school say paper molester" as he ripped up a sheet and got a laugh. Out at dinner with family later that week, and my mom made some crack to my aunt about whooping my ass, and I just chirped up, "Yeah, she's a child molester." The entire table going silent and staring at me was the most awkward moment of my life. I used to work in a movie theater when the remake came out. This woman came in with an about 10-year-old daughter. My boss was like, "Are you sure you want to bring your kid to see this movie?" She said it was fine. He was like, "Are you really sure, because there's a really graphic rape scene?" She said yeah, her son saw it and recommended it. He was like, "Are you really sure? I'm not giving you a refund if you come out." He was a hard ass. She said yeah, it's not a problem. 20 minutes or however long it takes to get to that scene, they come out and the little girl is absolutely sobbing and the mom is demanding a refund. My boss told her to get lost. I used to work in a theater, too. The only time I ever refused to sell a ticket was when some weekend dad wanted to take his 10-year-old daughter to see Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I told him there was a rape scene and he couldn't take her to see that. He was pissed off but finally bought tickets to a kids movie instead. Why the hell would a mother bring her child in there even after he said there was a graphic rape scene? And then having the nerve to ask for a refund after she was warned. Just seems like a really bad move on her part. The mother is the only innocent victim, and her ordeal is just so emotionally devastating to watch. Her loneliness is soul-crushing. It made me hate Jared Leto's character even more. I understand he's a victim of his own addiction, but the way he uses her and then tosses her aside makes me want to punch him in the dick. Lungs don't inflate and deflate on their own, they need the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles. They are just sacs, or sponges, that get squeezed to push out air, and pulled taut against the chest cavity to inhale. That's why getting a perforating wound to the chest can be so dangerous. If air enters the space between lung and chest, then the lung won't expand anymore when we try to inhale, like poking a hole in a suction cup. This is exactly what I came here to say. When I watched the movie the first time, I couldn't sleep properly for a week because every time I was in the dark I convinced myself her limp, cold body with a pipe shoved down her throat was lurking just outside my field of vision. I had a panic attack while seeing that movie. It was later in at OFC, but that first scene, the suicide. That was when I felt this ball in my stomach. That hasn't been there before while watching horror. That made me very uneasy, lol. The sister was the creepiest part of that movie for me, too. The act was so aggressive and horrible to tape the exhaust hose to her face that way and kill the parents along with herself. I am 100% with you on this scene. Of all of the completely messed up parts in this movie, it's the images of this scene that return to me. When the first responders are following the hoses up the stairs, and then yes, the image of the sister and just the thought of your whole family gone like that. I almost didn't continue with the rest of the movie. It's at the beginning of the movie and is main focus of the film, so it's not a major spoiler. This can be potentially triggering, alongside the rest of the movie, so please be aware of that. Regardless, the protagonist's mentally unstable sister uses a series of tubes, hoses, and masks to commit a double homicide and suicide via carbon monoxide poisoning, winding them around the house elaborately to make sure the gas reaches. She attached masks to her sleeping parents' faces to suffocate them to death. The doors were extensively taped shut so no gas escapes to ensure their deaths. She also puts a mask on herself in the office of the family home, where she commits suicide via carbon monoxide poisoning. It's a very gruesome scene in combination with the film work and the rawness of the cautious emergency workers and the setting of a lived-in family home surrounded by tragedy. The camera doesn't pan away from the scenes whatsoever, as other movies most likely would have, which makes it all the more shocking as the suicide/murder is the focal point of every shot. It's definitely one of the most upsetting, unique, and horrifying movies I've ever seen, and I suspect we won't see something like it for many years to come. This is exactly what I was going to say. The opening scene of Midsommar was brutal. It is super plausible that this could happen, and it looked so realistic. It triggered my own personal traumas around the subject of suicide. I didn't find the rest of that movie to be particularly scary because I had completely dissociated for the rest of the film and even into the next morning. I wish I would have had a warning about that scene so I could have foregone seeing it in a theater. The rest of the film felt more like high fantasy, no pun intended, than anything else. I had thought, from watching the trailer, that the tragedy or thing that Danny was recovering from was like, oh, a death in the family, like maybe a car accident or someone died of cancer, IDK, something like tragic but normal and mundane. The extreme tragedy of her whole family dying, and not to mention the fact that she's still with the guy who had told her not to worry and her sister was just doing her usual thing for attention. It's like, I was floored. There's like a whole entire other movie at the beginning of that movie. I actually really wanted to know more about the sister's motivation and the family dynamic. No matter how wrong her sister obviously was for doing so, it felt like there has to be something going on, but we really get no background there. It's actually really weird. I like Ari Aster, but there's actually a degree to which I can't take Midsommar seriously because people's reactions to things and motivations feel so off base. I couldn't stay friends with a guy who treated his girlfriend as though she was always overreacting after that happened. You know? I could also speak on how extreme and potentially damaging a portrayal of bipolar disorder it is, but, man, shrugging. I don't know why you got downvoted. The movie is fantastic, and I love it. Yeah, it's messed up and weird as fuck, but it's also absolutely beautiful to look at. It's not a conventional horror movie because it's never actually scary. It puts you on the defensive with that perpetual feeling of dread, like, you just know shit's not right but everything looks so pretty. I think it was brilliant to have it set in bright daylight, with vibrant colors everywhere. It's very disorienting and unsettling because these two things just shouldn't go together. Daylight and bright colors mark safe zones and it should give you a sense of security. All the bad shit happens in the dark. It's like someone playing Rick Astley over the rape scene in Irreversible. It's just wrong. The strangers, when Kristen is in the kitchen, smoking and getting a glass of water, are back to the living area/hall. You just see the masked man emerge from the shadows and stand there for a few minutes, watching her, completely silent and unnoticed. There's no musical sting. Nothing. He's out of focus, in the distance. Nothing really happens, but you just don't know how long that will last. Of course, when the camera finally pulls away for a brief moment and gives Kristen the chance to turn around, he's gone. She never knew he was there at all. That scene made me so paranoid. Absolutely. There's a short film shot entirely from a MacBook camera, where there's no music, no nothing. There's barely a narrative. This college girl's the only person in frame for about 98% of it. Just cuts of her cooking dinner, getting ready to go out in the bathroom, on the phone with her mom, and her and a guy she brought home making out in bed as he tries to get her dress off. As things go on, there's few clues something's up. Someone will buzz her door and she'll go to answer it and get no response. She mentions someone stealing her mail. She calls Apple support because her webcam won't shut off. Stuff like that. There's just this weird sense of dread that builds up. At the very end, she's sleeping in bed watching Netflix on her laptop, her bedroom door open behind her, and some guy comes out of the shadows of her hallway and closes her laptop. It's legit terrifying and scarier than anything else I've seen.